Good morning. I wanted to get on here give you guys a kind of an update on where we're at on Measure 114. So we got some news yesterday. Basically, what had happened is we filed our response to previous ruling out of the Oregon State of Appeal Appellate Court, and so I'm gonna hop on to my other platform and share the stream. So give me 1 second. We'll talk about it. So I hope you guys are doing good. It's Happy Friday. It's an early stream. I'm just trying to get this information out before I have to hop on the road. So please bear with me. And come here. Give me 1 second. So this is not working. Okay, so we'll just not we're not going to worry about it. Basically, where we're at is our attorney Tony Allo he filed a response um, to the state's, or actually it was the ruling that came out of the Oregon State Court of Appeals, and so that was a ruling, and so this was our response to that, and that's what this is basically creating part of the record that goes in front of the Oregon State Supreme Court. That's going to be in November, and I'll give you kind of a timeline once I get everything kind of set up and going the way I need it to go, and then we'll kind of break down everything, and we'll go from there. And so what I really appreciate about his writings is how basically it was really easy for the average person to read. And if you guys haven't checked it out, what I'll do is I'll put a link into the the comments of this video so you guys can kind of see it for yourselves, and that way you can understand kind of where we're at, what it's looking for, what argument we're going to be using, which I think is good. And what I really appreciate about what he did is the fact that it's really easy to understand, and so that's something that we have, that's really in our favor. And so if you make it easy for them to understand, then it's going to be easy for them to hopefully rule in a fair way. Obviously the we have to understand is the deck is stacked against us, and we have to be aware of that. But there's things that we have going that are going to be working in our favor, and I feel that this is definitely a step in the right direction. And so when you make it easy and palatable for um, the the general public to understand, it's going to be a little bit easier for the judges to kind of see what that looks like. And so I'm cautiously optimistic, and it's going to take time to kind of figure out what it all looks like, and so we have a couple hurdles that we're going to have to get through, and we'll talk about those. And obviously I'm still getting everything set up, so I apologize for that, and my attention's elsewhere. And so appreciate you guys tuning in. This is definitely, hey Don, how you doing? And so I'm gonna I'm gonna kind of share my screen, and that way you guys can kind of see what I see, and then we'll kind of talk about what this all looks like, and kind of go from there. And so let's do it. And so here is our ruling. And so this is, and actually this is the response. And so it's a good response. It's about, I want to say about 80 pages. I read it in about 20 minutes. And so I think it's good reading. So if you guys are interested, what I'll do is I'll put a link to it here. And so you guys can kind of see, what he put a lot of time in. I talked to him last night. After he dropped this, and I gave him, I'm proud of him. I think he's done a really good job. I think he has a really good grasp of the argument, and so everything's here. And so you'll be able to read it, and obviously it talks about the burden that's imposed on us as gun owners. The delays, they could be an unreasonable delay. So I think that's something that we have going in our favor. And so that's just something that we all should be aware of. Is this is just another chapter in this saga, and we've been dealing with this. Obviously, it was on the ballot back in 2022. It's been to court in the federal level. It also has been to court at the state level. Then it went to the appeals process. Like it is, it has been a journey, and so, but it's not over. Okay, so we're still in this fight. We're gonna still fight forward, and so that's what I'm really thankful for this. And what I'll do is I'll put the link in here so you guys can read it yourselves and just kind of digest it. Understand, this is a legal document. Legal briefs are sometimes hard to read. I've read over my career, I've spent a lot of time reading these briefs. And I can say that this one is a really well written one, and this one's easy. It's very palatable. It's very like it almost kind of makes you want to read it because it's the way he wrote it. And so I'm really thankful for that because in situation, especially like I would say on the other side when we're talking about the state's case and how they're trying to support the constitutionality of Measure 114, they don't know what they're talking about. All they can speak is in case law, precedent, all this other stuff that you and I, at the layman's, it's really hard for us to understand, and it's because they really don't have a grasp of the concept. They don't really have a grasp of what is happening when it comes to firearms, and they don't know how they work. And so they're basically speaking from a position where they don't know, and so it kind of it kind of reads that way sometimes in their briefs. And so what I really enjoy about this one is the fact that it's really easy for you to follow along, and it's very specific about person to person transfers. Like it breaks it all down, so it's really really great reading. And so it'll be there. And so obviously what this is this is a response. Okay, so this is a response. This is part of the record. This is going to, and this is basically going to support his argument on November 6th. And so that's where basically he's putting all the facts of the case into a brief. He's going to submit it to them so they have stuff ahead of time at the Oregon State Supreme Court. And then on 11/6, that's when he gets to kind of argue his case. Obviously, the other side is going to get to argue their case. So it's going to be, I'm not sure exactly what all that looks like. I'll know more as we go on through this process. And this one's going to be in Salem, and this is going to be open to the public. And so this is something that we would, maybe save the date. Like if you could take off some time to be there to show support, it would be good for us to be there to support Tony and have a face in the courtroom. And so I plan on being there. That's going to be on 11/6, and there'll be more information. But just save the date. If you can save the date now, I think that'd be really helpful. And so this document is basically going to go to the judges. They're going to be able to have this information, and then he's going to be arguing the merits of this, and he'll be countering the other side because they're going to have a response to this. And so that's how this is going to go. And so I just want to give you guys this update, and I appreciate you guys tuning in. And so it talks about the magazine capacity, the way the state of Oregon originally, the way they're ruling on the magazine capacity. They're basically going off the rails here because there's no precedent that suggests that what they're doing has been done anywhere in the country. And so that's something that I feel that we have going in our favor is they kind of they went too aggressive with the mag capacity ban. And I feel that we're in a good position that they bit off more than they can chew, and that might cost them because obviously there's no precedent that will support them that this is going to be, because everything is in the guise of public safety. Okay, so this is the lens that they use to push this stuff, and there's really no supporting evidence from any other jurisdiction across the country that the way they propose this is actually going to do anything to help public safety. And I feel that the way he broke this all down, I think that's going to be very supportive of us. And so that's where I want to make sure that you guys are kind of understand kind of where we're at. And so I'm doing this video early in the morning because I got to get on the road, but I want to make sure you guys got this information because there's some really important things that we should be focusing on. Okay, so a couple things that we should be focusing on is we should be focusing on, this is an active litigation case, so this costs money. So I'll put the link to the Gibson Go. We definitely need the funding, And that's how this. The only way we lose is if we don't have the money to fight this. Okay, so it doesn't take much. We could all, Oregon gun owners. There's 2 million of us. If we could put in, $20 a piece, that would definitely fill the coffers. I will put the link to this ruling or this response in the body of this video, and I will also put the link so you can help donate if you can. And so I think it's just really important. We can budget it where we don't have to. We're not going to argue until November, so we have time to raise capital. And so everything's going to go. It stays within this fight, and it's going to go hopefully go help support your gun rights. So get involved, be a part of it, and so that's something to think about there. And like this is an interesting comment. So. And while I understand the concept, like, and I've seen this a lot over the years of dealing with this Measure 114 is where everybody talks about I'm not going to comply. I'm not going to comply. Or we only lose if we comply. So the one thing to think about is this is going to be you're going to be you're going to comply by force. That's the way this is going to go. There's criminal penalties if this thing, and this is hypothetical. If this thing goes into effect, there's a Class A misdemeanor for you having a magazine that has a detachable base plate or holds over 10 rounds outside of your home. Okay, so there's no affirmative defense. And actually, excuse me, there is an affirmative defense. You have to prove that you were in possession of this magazine before an arbitrary date. Okay, so when people say they're not going to comply, they really and maybe you understand is the only you're going to comply through force. It's going to be either criminal penalties or you're not going to have this permit, right, to purchase the gun if this thing goes into effect. And so you might say that you're not going to comply, but the only way you could legally buy a gun in the state of Oregon is if you have this permit. So I get the sentiment and I support it, but I have to understand, like, we have to be real with each other and understand that, yeah, we can say that we're not going to comply, but the only way for us to be law abiding is if we do comply to some regard. And I don't know what that looks like for you. I can only make my decision for myself. And so that's something, um, that's just something to be aware of. I mean, you're going to comply whether you like it or not. And it's either handcuffs or you're going to understand like what's truly at stake. So our best bet, I guess, where I'm going at with this conversation is it doesn't take much to be proactive to help support the case that hopefully can bring this stuff to an end. That's kind of the goal of what I was trying to say. And so, I can't tell you how to behave. Like, everybody's a free person here. Just know there would be ramifications for our actions. And so, and I hate for good people. And that's the hard part about this situation is there's a lot of good folks that are going to get caught up, that are going to be potentially criminals because of a bad policy or a bad law. So it's super bad. So I totally get the frustration. I'm I'm there with you. So just know, yeah, 100% right here. I mean, in reality, there's no way to comply. And I think that's the scariest part for us as gun owners that are trying to be, law abiding is, there's no way for us to, they don't have classes ready. They don't have the permit to purchase process ready. And so in theory, um, in theory that, um, there's no way for us to actually get through this process. So we're in a position where, in theory, this is, we can get held up there. So there could be another lawsuit. So that's just something to think about. Is currently, they should have done better and preparing for this, like in the event this is to go into effect, because obviously if this does go into effect, they do not have the staffing for the permitting agents. They don't have everything, the courses ready. Like it's a mess. It really is. And so while I understand, people, the frustrations, I totally get it. So that's kind of where I'm at. I think that's something that we all should be aware of is they're not going to be ready for this, and we're going to have to just kind of figure out what that looks like. And so our best bet is to help support our attorney, the guy that's fighting the fight, and being a part of this process and making sure that we can do our part, and then we're there on November 6th, okay? And one thing to think about, just because they go um, that just because the here's interesting. So dangerous criminals. That's another thing that I wanted to focus on. Is this is the dangerous criminals aspect, and so and I love the way that he is basically painting a picture of there's two different classes, right? There's the people that are like us, that are law-abiding citizens, that are paying our taxes and doing what we need to do, and then there's the part that, and we're the ones that can be controlled because we're the ones that are going to follow this law. But there's nothing that's really supporting, like there's no prosecutions for the criminals. Like it just makes us all look like criminals. It's a mess. It really is. And so that's where I just think that we just have to just understand. So some of the timelines, I don't want to take too much more of your time, but so we filed our response, and so now on September 18th of 2025, the state is required to respond to the information that we just put out yesterday. Okay, and so that's on September 18th, and then we have until October 9th to be able to respond to that. So we get to reply to their response. So we have a couple different things that we're working on. Obviously, Tony's going to do all the work on our behalf. And then we have the oral arguments going to be November 6th. And so that one's going to be up in Salem. So that's one, if we could save the day and we can be there, that'd be great. Because we know the red shirts are going to be there. We know Lift Every Voice is going to be there. We know like all the typical players are going to be there. And so, that's something that we all should be aware of. And if we can be there, it would be really great to just show support for, what we're going through. So, that's about all I got, unless you guys have some questions or comments. So obviously we can fund the lawsuit. That's what's really, really important. And we'll just go from there. I just want to give you guys this update, and just know that the ruling's there, or excuse me, the response is there. It's a good response. It takes, if you're taking your time, it could take 30 minutes to an hour to read. It's double spaced, about 79 pages. And there's a lot of good little nuggets in there. The Bruin decision is probably only mentioned once. It's not as relevant in this case because this is a state case. So that's why he kind of went that route. He told me that he had, so originally his brief was 19,000 words, and he had to cut it to 14,000 to make it where, because they can only have a certain amount of words in their response. And so that was kind of interesting here. So he said there was a lot of stuff. So he wrote this, and then he went back and he chopped it down to make it where it would, to make the 14,000 words. So it's a good read. So I recommend you guys check it out, and just understand, this is the conversation that we're going to be arguing in front of the Oregon Supreme Court, and that's going to be on November 6th. So that's about all I have, and I'm gonna get off here. I got to get to work, and I hope you guys have a good day. Thanks for tuning in, and that's about all I got. So have a good day, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you.